over the course of the two workshops, what I'd like to cover is a very, very in-depth experience of the bandhas. I hope to give you lots of different, everything I've ever learned and practiced that I can offer you so that you can experience the bandhas in all kinds of different ways, different levels of subtlety for different kinds of practices. And so we'll practice using the bandhas in asana and in pranayama and in meditation. So moving from the most gross use of the bandhas into subtler use of bandhas in pranayama practice, and then the most subtle use of the bandhas in meditation practice. And so, 3 hours times 2 is not very long. So and it's kind of a lifelong thing to work with the bandhas and to experience and study and learn about the bandhas, and it's always changing and evolving. And just recently, Roger and I were doing our practice at home, and he said he had this like epiphany, his face lit up, and he's like, wow. I'm like, yeah, more wows. What's the wow? And he says, oh, I just had this experience of Uddiyana Bandha that I've never ever had it before, and now I understand Uddiyana Bandha. But I've heard him say that dozens of times, hundreds of times. Oh, now I understand Uddiyana Bandha, and it's like that. It is very, very much like that as you move into, especially when you start to move into pranayama and meditation, use of the bandhas in pranayama and meditation. But even in asana practice, it gets pretty subtle, and you can have some realizations in your asana practice once you start to become really familiar with using the bandhas and experiencing them. And so the little pamphlet is just a little sample of what we're going to do in each of the areas. When we use the bandhas in the breath or the mind or the asana practice, or how we use them, and it's just a sampling of ways to experience them, and it's not at all complete. This is just the point that I want to make. It's really, really woefully incomplete. You could never write any kind of no length of book would suffice, you see. So you may as well start anywhere, start somewhere. And so that's what I'd like to offer you. And the most important thing of all is the second page, the lineage. So I'm very grateful that you came. Thank you for coming today. I feel very honored, but I also, more than that, I feel that you honor the people who taught me everything, And, my teachers are many, but these are my 3 main teachers in these particular practices. Baba Haridas, who's a silent yogi, he's been silent since 1952. He hasn't spoken since 1952. And he started the Salt Spring Center of Yoga and Mount Madonna Center, Salt Spring, in California. And his centers teach hatha practices as well as the classical 8 limbs of yoga, the Ashtanga system of yoga, according to Master Patanjali. So that school of yoga, Salt Spring Center of Yoga, has a very strong practice of hatha, and that the bandhas are one of the practices of hatha yoga. And Swami Muktigarananda Saraswati is the Australian lady who translated the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which is like the major scripture of Hatha Yoga practice. It dates to around 1500 or something like that, 16th century. And she translated this text from Sanskrit and commentated it in her book, Hatha Yoga Pradipika, under the direct guidance of a guru named Swami Satyananda Saraswati, who is a direct disciple of Shivananda, Swami Shivananda. I think most of us know Swami Shivananda. What year was what?
When did she do translation?
Let's see. She is roughly the same age as me. She went to India when she was 17, so that would have been 1956,
70s.
70s.
So that was a big thing about bringing yoga to the West.
It was a big thing, yeah. So the way she met him in Australia, which is where she's from. So Guru Satyananda Saraswati was touring in America and in Australia and all over the world, actually, all over the world. And interestingly, in Eastern Europe, a lot. You'll be very interested to know. Eastern Europe, a lot. Yeah, it's very amazing. And he was a direct disciple of Swami Shivananda. And so, Swami Shivananda, all Swami Shivananda's students, right? Vishnu Devananda and those, there's a sort of like the 12, I don't know how many it is, but like the 12,
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it was 12, whatever, but anyway,
Sounds
the
good.
12 students of Swami Shivananda whom he unleashed into the world. This is in the 60s. It's the 60s and even earlier. So Swami Satyananda Saraswati was one of those, and he was sent to Australia, where Swami Muktivananda, this young Australian girl, she was 12 at the time. Her mother took her, and she just knew. She knew that she had to go and study with this guru. And her mother made her wait till she was 17, and then she sent her. She took her. She went with her. And that lady is coming to Vancouver in September. This lady here. She's coming to Vancouver on September 4th, and she's going to give a number of presentations and lead a number of retreats. So please be in touch with us if you're interested. She's also leading a 5-day retreat on Gabriel Ryan. So she commentated on Hatha Yoga Pradipika. It's a text like this of Hatha practice. And Hatha practice is asana, pranayamas, purification practices, shatkarmas, bandhas and mudras come under this heading, and then samadhi, meditation practice, how to use, how to. So it's like a progression, It's the Hatha path, right? And she's not only is she a master of the Hatha path, but she's clearly a guru yogini. She understood, She understood this weird secret, this weird magic of being drawn to somebody and understanding that you had to go, and not only that you had to go, but that you had to listen and you had to soak it all in and absorb it like crazy, because you were going to be called upon to, people were going to then draw it out of you. So that's what I was starting out to say, is that I'm grateful that you've come, because it's an honor to my teachers, to all of my teachers, because that's why they stuff it into you. They stuff it into you because they know that somebody's going to suck it out of you. That's why they do it, and so they're hoping that that's going to be the case. So I feel very much that you honor my teachers, and that I'm grateful for. These kinds of things, without the teacher, there's nothing, because these kinds of practices were taught one-on-one. Traditionally, they were taught one-on-one, or at the very most two-on-one. So let's just go back in the lineage a little bit, okay? Most of you know that my background is Tibetan Buddhist practice, quite strong Tibetan Buddhist background, and then also the yoga lineage, just by virtue of the fact that, back then and even earlier, that when I say back then, I'm talking about the 16th century, but even going back to, I don't know, 1200s, 1000 or so, 1000 AD, when Guru Naropa lived. And maybe some of you have heard the 6 yogas of Naropa, very famous yoga lineage, right? So Naropa was an Indian guy who went from being a monk, an ordained monk, to being a wild forest yogi. And he got the transmission of these practices that we're going to be talking about from his guru Tilopa at great, great, great cost and hardship, because they weren't given easily. You couldn't PayPal your $40, and go, right? You couldn't do that. It didn't work like that. And if you wanted it, you had to, of course, you had to ask, but you didn't just have to ask once. You had to ask. In the case of Naropa, he had to ask. I don't know, for years, decades. He asked for decades, and finally the Guru said, "Okay, I'll tell you. I'll give you this transmission." And then as soon as the Guru said, "Okay, I'll give you this transmission," he then put him through 12 tests, which ranged from jumping off a multi-story building to diving into a piranha-laden river to robbing a wedding, not of the bride, but of everything else. All sorts of tests that the Guru put him through to prove that he seriously was interested and that he had the I can only think of a profane word. That he had
mental fortitude?
Yeah, the fortitude. They had the fortitude to sustain hearing about it, and doing the practices. Doing the practices is really what it is. I once had a meditation teacher. I still have her, although she's a little reclusive. But this particular meditation teacher used to routinely throw people out of her class. And the reason was that one of the requirements of that meditation class was that you kept a meditation journal. You had to keep a meditation journal, journalizing the meditations that she taught us, right? And so then you had to submit those journals to her. And so class would come around, twice a week, and people would all show up in the class, and she would know off the top of her head, she would say, Alistair, you didn't give me your journal, and Yvonne, you didn't give me your journal, so you'll have to leave. And it wasn't that she was mean, although she appeared to be mean sometimes, but it wasn't, I now know, that she was mean. It was that she was transmitting this lineage, which to her was completely priceless. You couldn't put a price on it. But at the very least, it cost doing what she asked. That was the very smallest price that you got to pay for what she was trying to teach. So at the very least, she wanted you to practice what she was teaching. And if you couldn't, at the very least, do that, she asked you to leave, not because she felt like she was being insulted or anything, but that it's a great disservice to your own karma to go and ask a teacher to teach and be taught, and then not to follow through and not to practice. Practice is the thing, right? Not to practice is it's a nasty karma. And the result of it is that you can't get the teaching, you can't understand the teaching, you can't internalize the teaching, you can't realize it, you can't get what it's supposed to confer upon you. You just can't get it, It doesn't work. That's what it is. It doesn't work. And then if you say to someone, "Oh yeah, her meditation course is really cool," it doesn't really work though. Like, I don't know, I didn't really get really still or reach samadhi or, any of these lofty things. Somehow, it didn't work. So, like, I'll try another one, So that doesn't work. Who it doesn't work for is the person who's feeling that way. That's the person it doesn't work for. And if that's what's happening, then, the more you think, okay, well, I'll go somewhere else, right? The less it works. And it just keeps on compounding. Because that kind of attitude towards a priceless lineage transmission is so then what's that word? It's like so flippant, yes? It's so flippant, right? So this kind of flippant attitude, the result of it is that you just don't get it, and then you just feel like it doesn't work, that stuff doesn't work. So I like to quote the Dalai Lama. I think that he really put his finger on it when he said, there are many, many different kinds of religions. There's Hinduism, and there's Buddhism, and there's Catholicism, and Judaism, and Jainism, and on and on, like this. But there's, only really one kind of practitioner, the one who practices. is really the only kind of true spiritual practitioner or religious practitioner. And nobody else is, you can't say, you're anything unless you're doing it, right? That kind of makes sense. You can't say that you're a pianist or anything unless you're doing it, right, and practicing. So the lineage that has been handed down to me, everything that I tell you today, nothing is coming from me, nothing at all. Everything I've been taught by my teachers. The only thing that I have to offer you is that I actually did practice them. I did do that. I can tell you that. That much I can tell you. And I practice very hard, and I continue to practice hard. But Roger and I just did a 3-year retreat, so we had an opportunity, we had the amazing good fortune to be in a situation where that is what we did. That's all we did, was to practice. So that I also can offer you, in addition to what I've been given and granted. And frankly, even everything that you practice is also it's not anything that you do, or you achieve. When you sit in a retreat or you sit in any kind of a practice, and you think in your mind, okay, thank you, thank you for granting me these practices. Thank you for having the patience to teach me all this stuff. So now I'm gonna do it. Now I'm gonna practice it. So can you please help me, right? Because otherwise there's nothing going on either. So really, I could say that there's nothing at all about this workshop that's coming from me. Nothing. And so then I've indemnified myself, in a reverse way, right? And Geshe Michael Roach is our main teacher. He's what we call our heart teacher. The kind of like experience that I was describing to you that Swami Bhaktivedanta had, right? When that Guru Saraswati went to Australia, and she's 12 years old, and she sees him, and she's like, oh, Mom, I need to go, That kind of a, beyond the shadow of a doubt, heartstrings kind of a connection to a teacher. That's, for both Roger and me, that's Geshe Michael Roach. And then the thing that's very interesting about that particular kind of a connection is once you have it, and once you honor it, and once you actually become the student, or even hopefully the disciple, because there is a difference, So then if you become the disciple of any teacher, it doesn't matter who, but if you have that experience, you get to have it over and over and over again. And then, you really, they start to mushroom in your world and multiply in your world. And this sense that, wow, amazing, what an amazing teacher. It just like pops up all over the place, right? And that comes as a result of having that experience, even just once, right? So it's pretty cool to be able to see many, many people in your world as teachers at a very deep level, at a heart level. This is a really beautiful thing. Lama Pelma, one of our teachers, Lama Pelma, she's an ordained Buddhist nun, and she always says about that particular kind of an experience with the teacher, it's so cool, she says, and she's a nun, and she's never been married, but she says it's like being married, and I'm not sure she probably remembers it very viscerally from a past life, because she's never been married in this life that I know of. But she says, that experience with the teacher is like getting married, and then you don't have to worry anymore about what you're doing on Friday night, or anything like that, because, you have this teacher, and you just have to like listen, and you just have to be open to that. And it's not a function of that you have to go to India and sit at their feet, That's not what we're saying. It's just that experience of hearing teachings, hearing people teaching you all over the place all the time is what she's talking about. And it comes from having that connection. So anyway, that's the power of the lineage that brings me here today, and of course you guys, because you paid. So that's a wonderful place for us to meet. And what I'd like to do, because I'm going to assume that Lydia is not going to come, is get right into the the practices. So we're going to talk about Jalandhara Bandha, Uddiyana Bandha, and Mula Bandha. And you know, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika and the other ancient texts of India, like Gheran Samhita is another one that's a Hatha Yoga text, and Shiva Samhita is another heavy Hatha Yoga text. They talk about bandhas and mudras sort of interchangeably. So we're also going to have a couple of what are called mudras in today's workshop. Mudra means seal, and bandha means lock. So, you know, seals, locks, they kind of have a similar function. And they do. They're very similar. They work the same way. They produce the same sorts of results. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika has 3 bandhas, the 3 that we're talking about, in addition to what's called Mahabandha. Mahabandha is just where you activate those 3 or engage those 3 bandhas simultaneously. It's called Mahabandha. But other than that, there are 10 mudra practices which are taught in Hatha Yoga Pradipika, and those 10 mudra practices we're going to do 2 today. A little bit. We're going to touch on them because they're kind of helpful for learning about the bandhas. So, let's see. Just about Hatha Yoga practice generally, Hatha Yoga practice is not what the world, the yoga world in general, thinks it is, you know. Somehow Hatha practice has this reputation of being the easy class on the schedule. Is that still true?
I think so.
Is it? Who said that? Did you say?
I think, you said reputation. I know it isn't, but I believe it is.
Right. People think that it's the easy class, I think. I mean, before I was in retreat, that was the case, but, you know, things happen fast in this world, so I'm not going to assume that that's still the case, but anyway, it isn't true, is the point. It's not true that
I think
Hatha
it's less
is...
predictable.
It's not, that's for sure.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
think
not...
It depends on the instructors.
Uh-huh.
Like how they want to teach and what kind of
Right.
asana they want to do it.
Right.
Just, yeah.
But the point is that Hatha Yoga is not asana. I mean, it is asana, but it isn't just asana. So Hatha Yoga is one of many, many different kinds of yogas, right? And so there's Hatha Yoga and there's Guru Yoga, which is like bhakti, devotion yoga, where you go to a teacher, you know, you physically go and you sit at their feet and you say, okay, you know, my life is your life, so whatever you bid me to do, I will do it, and that is my yoga. And through this practice, I will reach enlightenment, right? Then there's Hatha Yoga, same goal, different method. Hatha Yoga is asana, but for example, in Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which is one of the Bibles of Hatha Yoga, there are only 15 asana. You know? And 4 of them are sitting ones, meditation postures. So there's 15 asana, and then there's Shatkarma, which is the purification practices prior to doing pranayama practice. And the purification practices are such things as, you know, nasal douche, neti, and then douching out different channels in your body, not just the nasal passages, but all the other digestive passages, and douching all the passages of your body, actually, you know, with water or whatever. And then things like doing different practices like Kapalabhati is one of the Shatkarma, so fire purification as well as water purification. And then purification practices for the chakras. So for example, the Ajna purification practice is Trataka. Trataka is gazing at a candle, right? That's one of the purification practices in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. So there are 6 of them. And those ones need to precede pranayama practice, because pranayama practice, also contrary to popular belief, is super volatile turbojet fuel, you know, and it has the potential to blast you into like oblivion, really, like a rocket. And so you can't do pranayama without the direct instruction of a teacher, and you have to do it very judiciously and very carefully. And so, because it's not so simple as we think it is in the modern yoga world. And that, I don't think it's a bad thing that it's been oversimplified. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's kind of cool because it plants seeds, for the seriousness of pranayama practice, And the fact that, everyone knows alternate nostril breathing, And everyone mostly people know Kapalabhati and stuff like that. Anybody who has ever done yoga kind of knows mostly what those things are.
But you're saying that's considered a purification practice and pranayama, just for both?
What, Nadi Shodhana?
No, like Kapalabhati.
Kapalabhati is, it's both, It's called pranayama, but actually it's a shatkarma. It's called pranayama, right? And you do it as a pranayama too, and you can do it as a pranayama. But it's technically in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, it's one of the shatkarma. And even Nadi Shodhana is not one of the pranayamas. Technically. Yeah. So Nadi Shodhana is called a preliminary practice to the pranayama practices in Hatha Yoga Pradipika. And Swami Muktibuddhananda, as I say, she's coming in September, and this is her book. She translated it. She'll be talking about it, at great, great, great length. So there's a number of different options for her teachings, like a weekend teaching, an evening teaching, a weekend teaching, a 5-day teaching. So please check it out. You can go to, did I put my card in there?
Yeah.
Yes.
You can go to our website, Padmanjali Yoga, to find information on all the different things she's going to be teaching. She's a yoga acharya. It's called a yoga acharya. She's been designated as like a world-class authority on these practices. And she's one of our teachers. And so I don't even know what I'm doing here today. It's just coming next month. But anyway, she taught me something, and somehow here you are. So you can suck it out of me. But she's definitely one of the world's foremost authorities on these practices of Hatha Yoga. So then the other Hatha Yoga practices after the pranayama, there's the shatkarma, there's the pranayama practices, and then after that come the mudras and the bandhas. So before you do pranayama practice, which is very powerful, you have to have purified your body, right? And that means at the subtlest level of the gross body, what the purification practices are designed to do is to purify the nerves from gunk. When you have phlegm in your body, right? And the more body fat we carry and the more phlegmy we are, the more the nerve conduction is not clear. What were you going to say?
Oh no, just weaker.
Yeah, it's weaker. Like the nerve conduction is weaker. And so, in the gross body, we're talking about that. And then beyond the gross body, beyond the nervous system, which isn't even something you can see, right? Can't see the nervous system, right? But you can, even less, you can see the nadis and the prana and the manipulation of the prana through the nadis and the channels. Much subtler, much finer, even than, light, which you could say, the nervous system is like energy, right? It's not physics, it's not blood, and it's not like that. It's a subtle substance. So before you start locking prana into your body using the mudras and the bandhas, you've got to be very, very pure. And once you're very, very pure, then you can do pranayama practices, which affect the nervous system. So now we've moved up from the gross body, purifying, the phlegm, to purifying the channels that carry prana, subtler than the nervous system. Then you can safely apply the bandhas, right? And then, once you can safely apply the bandhas, that process can take you into samadhi. That process can take you into samadhi. It's a way to get into samadhi, just like Guru Yoga can, or just like Jnana Yoga, or Raja Yoga, some of the other yogas, right? So Jnana Yoga and Raja Yoga are more intellectually driven systems of yogic science, and they're more like philosophical systems of yoga, right? Some of you are studying like with Doug Vinhall, meditation with Doug Vinhall. So that's like a Raja Yoga or Jnana Yoga system. I mean, it's a physical practice, but it's not a physical practice like Hatha practice. And Tibetan Buddhism is kind of cool because it has both. You know, it has very, very intensive Jnana and Raja Yoga practices. That actually is the foundation. It's kind of interesting to me that the Raja Yoga practices provide the foundational system for the Hatha practices in Tibetan Buddhism. But in the Indian yogic science lineage, the Hatha Yoga practice is the road to Raja Yoga. So what does that mean? What that says is like nobody's wrong and everybody's right. And wow, what does that mean? Like, how, well, what then, you know? What are we going to do? So I say try it all, you see. Because why do you think it is that there's so many systems? Yes, so many Dumbo students of us, you know. So many hard to tame students, you know, like what to do with them all, you know. Let's just give them like everything. You know, they can just see, you know, what feels right. And that's the way it works. So it's nice to try a few different things and see what works for you. But once you find something that resonates for you and you're attracted to, then of course you have to do it. That much is for sure, right? Okay. So I'd like to also say, having done Hatha practice for many years, that it's my preferred method of practice is definitely Hatha practice. That is, you know, that really works for me, and I like it. I love it, you know, and it's what I do. And I think that it's not just Hatha practice. All the yogas have a potential for a practitioner to become very self-absorbed, and it's especially easy in a long retreat to get really self-absorbed because there's nobody there. There's nothing going on, and there's nobody talking, and there's nobody distracting you, and there's nothing else to do but to get up at 4 o'clock every day and practice. And then when you practice that much, you know, it starts to work, you know, a little bit. And then it starts to feel really good, right? Because the purpose of the practice is to make you feel really good forever. So, and it does. It starts to feel really good, and you think, wow, this is nice. Let's do more, you know. So then you do more. Then it feels better. And pretty soon it's like 3 years, you know, and you don't want to go anywhere. Then you think, uh-oh, why was I doing this again? So I right? So, and it's not just the Hatha practices, you know, there is a potential in all practices, if you practice, that you become a little self-absorbed, and you have to remember why. Why are you doing this stuff? All the time we have to wonder, why? What was it again? And, you know, our teachers said, you are doing these practices in order to become a being who can be of service a little bit to somebody, anybody, without being worried about yourself. That's what they said. So that's why we're doing these practices, so that we can become people who are able to help people, become people who are not in a position to need to worry anymore about having our own needs met, where we can apply ourselves to the needs of other people and do whatever it takes to show them or teach them, or in any way that they can hear us, you know, in any way that they can hear us. So that's kind of the definition of a Buddha, right? It is the definition of a Buddha, to say what kind of a being is a being who knows what everybody needs, and not only do they know what everybody needs, but they know how to deliver it, in what method to deliver it, so that it can be understood and heard, and that it will work. That's called a Buddha. An enlightened person only knows that. So that's the purpose of the practices of the yogas, all the yogas, right? And so we'll start with a little meditation just to remind us of that fact. So have a nice meditation position that works for you.
I'll get a blanket for anybody.
Pardon?
I'm gonna get a blanket for myself. Does anyone want a blanket?
Does anyone want
I know it's warm, but I don't know if it's gonna be anybody.
I'd like one, thank you.
Okay, I'll take
Yeah,
one
thank
too.
you, Renata. Not because I'm cold, but.
Don't get too hot.
Thank you. And actually, this reminds me of something which I will pass on to you as a tip.
Who else sitting?
And that is that when you're sitting in a meditation position, one of the most important things, like before you even begin, is to have a nice, soft, cushy thing under your ankles, like this. So, it's not that I was cold, but if I don't have a thing like this under my ankles, my feet go to sleep. So if your feet go to sleep when you're sitting in a meditation position for a long time, and you have never tried this, try this. Putting something soft and cushy under your feet. Maybe that will help.
Anybody else? Second one.
Oops. And the cushier it is, the better it is for not so that your feet don't go to sleep. And then the second most important thing, after the physical position that you take, and the most important thing about the physical position is that you're very comfortable, totally comfortable, whether you're seated on a chair or sitting in a meditation position. Pardon? That it would be lying down, and lying down is fine, you know. I have no problem with that if you like. The only problem.
Long run this morning.
The only problem with it is that there's a tendency to fall asleep. That's the only problem, right? But other than that, it's fine if you can keep your mind with you. That's the other thing Swami Muktivarananda teaches in amazing ways. Yoga Nidra practice, which is, you do it in lying down. But it's called the yoga of sleep, Yoga Nidra, but it's not sleeping. But anyway. So here's the most important thing, that you're very comfortable. And that you're very, very relaxed. So just have a little scan of your body, starting by pressing into your sitting bones and imagining that your tailbone is like your third sitting bone, providing a little triangular foundation for you against which you can press up into the crown of your head. And then you feel that your tongue sort of comes to rest naturally against the roof of your mouth, and then maybe you can feel this, almost like the roof of your mouth draws away from the tongue. And you feel yourself becoming a little bit weightless. A little bit weightless and light. And then just check. Can you let go more somewhere? Is there somewhere where you can release tension? Your jaw, fingers, your teeth, your brain. So, please call to mind one of the natural disasters that we've known in our world recently. There's never any end of them somehow. There's always lots to choose from. Maybe the Christchurch earthquake or the Fukuoka earthquake in Japan. If you've ever experienced it, it's like the whole earth gets pulled out from under your feet, but it just goes on and on. And the minute, the 60 seconds of the quake, it's like an eternity for people who've felt it. Devastating, shocking. And then when finally the earth becomes still again, you immediately look for your two children or your pet. You try to make contact with someone by yourself, someone you love. You walk outside, and the devastation hits you in the heart. It's total. The front porch isn't even aligned with the house anymore. It's like the whole thing's just shifted 2 feet off to one side. The 2-story house across the street is just 1 story now. There's a massive crack in the center of your street, a gash. Smoke, sirens start. You want to attend to a cut on your arm, but there's no water. You call to your 2 children to bring their pillows. You start to have a sense of the utter devastation, and your mind goes into high gear. What do I do? How do I get out? What shall I take? You and your children. You grab what you can. You look out the back. You see that you can drive still down the back alley. You start to stuff your car full of everything that you can imagine that you might need to survive. Food, clothes, warm clothes, water. Every drop of water. You happen to have flats of water. You pack your car to the gunnels. Put your 2 children in. And you start to drive down the alley. And as you look out towards the street, you see that eventually gash ends and the street is intact, and you people lining the street, all heading in the same direction that you want to go, all on foot, people starting to pull out of their driveways too. You drive along the street, praying that you can reach safety with your two children, praying that the traffic will keep moving, praying that the access roads out of town are damaged. And as you drive along, more and more people are pouring out into the street, all going the same way as you. And then, as you're driving along, a woman turns around and looks directly into your eyes. She has a child in each hand and a baby on her back, and that's all. And in her gaze, she implores you to help her. She begs you to help her. And in that instant, you realize that if you don't, that she will die there. They won't make it. And in that instant, you realize that your car full of stuff, your two children in your car full of stuff, is what you have drawn your circle around. You've somehow managed to widen your circle to be one that goes just around you to one that goes around your two children. So now the circle encompasses you and two other people. And then you manage to widen your circle to include a whole bunch of stuff. So your circle is now you, your two children, food, blankets, clothes. This is me, my circle of me. What do we need to do to widen our circle, to make it an infinite circle, to encompass all beings in our circle? All beings are me. We do it with our children. We even do it with our car. Unless we know, unless we find out, unless we can figure out how to widen our circle, that woman will die and her children too. And we'll keep on seeing it. We'll keep on seeing it over and over. People will suffer and they will die. Over and over and over. So, that meditation is based on a Tibetan meditation practice, which Christine has taught, right, a couple of times. Right? Have you taught it recently? How many times? 3 times. She's taught it. It's the practice of Dakshin Yamje.
I'm having a really hard time
Hearing me.
for some reason today.
What about I think what we can do is make the audio accessible, available to everyone who is here. Robin? We'll make the audio available to everyone who is here. So if you can, we're videotaping it.
Oh.
So we'll make the audio available, and if you miss something, then hopefully you can touch it on the audio. Yeah? Yeah, come right here. So anyway, the Tibetan practice is called Dakshin Yamje, and it means exchanging self and others. And in this kind of practice,
On that mat. This is in front of the video. Yeah, in front of that mat. Just pick up you.
I don't know what's going on over there. The whole media setup, I don't know the...
no, come right here.
Just bring you.
Don't worry.
Just bring you. And your blanket.
Exchanging self and others is that concept of how do we widen the circle of what I call me, me. And the example that our teacher Geshe Michael always used to give was, if you have a brand new car, a Jensen Healy or something really outrageous. Who even knows what a Jensen Healy is? No, I didn't think you did. A Jensen Healy is like a
Say Maserati?
a what?
Maserati?
No, not Maserati.
Lamborghini?
No.
Better than that?
Even... You're kidding.
Yeah, but
British.
British.
Porsche?
Bentley,
Close. Bentley's.
Rolls Royce.
Then beyond the Rolls Royce, there's the, what did I say? The Jensen Healys of the world. They're like, you don't even want to know. But people who have them, usually people who own a car like that, right? If they go out to their car, which they rarely park on the street, but let's say they do, and somebody has keyed the car, they have a profound sense of being physically injured. I'm going to say, okay? They have a profound sense of, oh my God, what have they done to me? So their circle has widened to include them and the Jensen Healy, for example, And if you can widen your circle to be around you in the car, right? Then mothers just automatically, their me is always at least 2 people in their circle, right? Automatically, like however many children you have. And so you think like that, and you think, oh, well, if I can widen this circle of me to include one other person, then maybe I could, okay, what if I have another child, Oh, suddenly my circle is around 3 people, right? And, usually the husband is, of course, in there. Hopefully. But the mother-child thing is a real tight circle, right? You know what I mean? That's a real circle, and you know what I mean if you're a mother. And even if I don't, because people are like that with their pets or their parents or somebody, right? So most of us have the great good fortune to have been able to experience this circle around somebody other than just me. And thinking about widening that circle so that it isn't so, you see, the thing with having a circle just around me is that it is self-limiting. It's weird, You think it's not, right? You think it's self-preserving somehow. But actually it's self-limiting to have a circle just around me because you so limit yourself to a world where all you're doing is taking care of me. And that's a nasty kind of a world because, I don't know, have you noticed that no matter how much you try to take care of me, it's never enough, and like I'm never quite warm enough or cool enough or, had enough to eat or I've had too much to eat or it's just never enough and we always are trying to make ourselves happy. Is it true? generally speaking? Are we always trying to make ourselves happy, even though we're not? It's not like a even, you know. And you know, I know people who say, "I'm not unhappy. I'm not unhappy. I'm really happy." You know, and it's a good debate. Like lots of people are really happy, but, and I hate to even say "but" to them, but I just ask you, you know, to examine in your own heart, right? Like, are we truly, truly happy? You know, I don't know. You have to answer that question. So, and the way, the yogis say the way to become happy forever, totally happy forever, is to widen this circle, to learn to understand how to widen this circle so that your, all of your survival instinct and all of your tendency to look after you can then be expanded to look after many. And the more that you look after many, the more you have an understanding that, oh, I am looking after me, because somehow it makes you very happy to look after other people. You know, whether it's a pet or you know, children or a parent or whatever, other people. So that's the big goal. That's the main practice. That's the goal of the practice. You know, that's the only reason why you might want to sit around and, you know, literally gaze at your navel with your third eye, you know, for a few years or you know, a couple of hours on a Sunday afternoon. Because something happens when you learn to have that kind of depth of focus. And you know what happens is that you learn to focus all of your, first of all of your energy, you know, all of your concentration, dharana. You know, you learn to concentrate, you know, on one thing, and then as you learn to concentrate on one thing, dharana from Master Patanjali, then you learn to dhyana, which is to then hold your focus on that one thing for an indefinite period of time. Hold your focus, and as you learn to hold your focus, something happens. You know, something happens, and the next step is called samadhi, right? Goes focus your mind, you know, concentrate, focus your mind, and then something happens. So the hatha practice is designed to do that. It's designed to take you to that place of samadhi, where there's and samadhi is accompanied by pratyahara. Pratyahara means that you withdraw yourself from your senses, and you no longer have a consciousness of your body. You know, so you know you won't have feet that fall asleep if you're like even approaching samadhi, then you don't really have to worry about the blanket under your ankles anymore, stuff like that, right? And then you don't have to worry about noisy places, you know? Then you don't have to worry about like moving to some Gulf island for 3 years and try and like find a quiet place, you know, because it has nothing to do with it actually. Nothing to do with it, right? So your ability to get pratyahara and withdraw from your senses and go into a still point, you know, initially may have a lot to do with those external, extrinsic factors, but ultimately they do not. They don't. Right? It has to do with your ability to bring your consciousness to a single point. So that's the purpose of the hatha practices. Okay. And so close on the heels of figuring out some sort of a motivation that will sustain these kinds of practices, you know. And we have to have it. We each have to have that motivation. We have to be driven by a higher goal. We have to be driven by something that makes sense at the end of the day, because otherwise, I'll tell you this for sure, you won't do it. You know, you won't practice unless you have a very good reason, you know, and that reason has to come from you, right? You know, I can't tell you, oh, you know, here's what you should do, and you know, this is this maha altruistic thing that we're all doing here. You have to have something in your heart that says, you know what, this is not working, you know, and what am I going to do about it? And whatever that thing is the thing that you have to do, and that is the thing that will work. Above all, it's the only thing that will work, is the thing in your heart that you know you have to do to become to have that degree of motivation. And when you have that, then interestingly, anything will work. You see? So then if you have that intent and that motivation, then it doesn't matter that much anymore, whether you're doing this or that, or, dancing, or like, you're raising a family, or you're doing 3-year retreat and some ridiculous schedule, or what you're doing, it will work, right? If you're driven by that kind of motivation. So in the Satyananda lineage, the Bihar school of yoga, which is the Satyananda lineage of Swami Muktivedanta, and in most lineages they teach the bandhas, Jalandhara, Uddiyana, Mula, but we're going to do it in reverse because I don't remember why are we going to do it? Because it's because when you're trying to learn how to do Jalandhara Bandha, the easiest way to experience Jalandhara Bandha, for example, is as a result of doing Uddiyana practice. And when you do an Uddiyana practice, spontaneously you engage Jalandhara Bandha. And the same is true for Mula Bandha and Uddiyana Bandha. So when you're doing Mula Bandha, automatically you're already halfway in from a neural perspective. Like, what does my nervous system need to do in order to give the correct command to my physical body to access this subtle thing that she's talking about? If you're at Mula Bandha, automatically you're like partway into Uddiyana Bandha. And if you're into Uddiyana Bandha, then you're already subtly doing Jalandhara Bandha. But the opposite is not true. That's why. So, anyway, that's what we're going to do here today. We're going to do Mula Bandha first. And we'll do it again in a meditation way, as a meditation method. And this one is probably a little bit more engaging, and you won't probably have a tendency to fall asleep so much. So you could lie down if you like, but if you're okay, yeah. It is preferable to be seated, because when you're in a seated position, and the good position, by the way, for Mula Bandha is what's called Siddha Yoni Asana, or for women, and for men it's called Siddhasana. Does everyone know? Okay. So Siddha Yoni Asana for women, you place, and this is maybe not so easy, but you might start with this kind of a position where you have one ankle in front of the other, if you can. And this is called, what's this one called? Sukhasana? Is it Sukhasana?
Yes.
Yeah, Sukhasana, right?
Although not so easy.
Yes,
everybody.
Sukhasana, which means easy pose, but it's not so easy, that's
So
true.
are you deliberately leaning into your heel? Your inner heel?
Yeah, what it is, right, is ultimately where we're going with that is we're putting one or the other of your heels into the vaginal opening. So you're kind of sitting on top of that one heel, and then the other foot comes into this space between the calf and the thigh and rests on top of the first heel. So the two heels, yeah, and if that's not happening, you can take Sukhasana, yeah, or
one? Okay.
oh
Better than
yeah,
none.
absolutely, that's perfect. If you can even get the one heel into that place, that's good. And if not, it's absolutely not important at this particular stage. So if you're here, then maybe this bottom foot will come up into this other crease, or maybe it won't. If it's comfortable to do so, yeah, that's nice. So something like that. So what's going on here is we're applying a physical push, and you can do this with all kinds of different things, which I'll talk to you about later. You're applying a force into the yoni, the vagina, right, which is where Mula Bandha is, and we'll talk about that in a sec. So there's that way of engaging or heightening the awareness of the Muladhara chakra. And then it also gives a very, very balanced position, on the sitting bones. And it's quite different from, it's kind of like the closest thing to Padmasana, lotus, which few of us are going to do, for prolonged periods of time, I'm guessing. I don't know, it's kind of unusual that people can do Padmasana like for an hour or even a minute. But Padmasana is the position, full lotus. the Padmasana position locks the prana into into the body without even doing anything else, nothing else at all. It just basically locks the nadis, so that even if you don't do any pranayama, you don't do any meditation, nothing at all, automatically it's already physically like a big assist, into that state of bringing the prana into the body, into the central channel. That's the advantage of Padmasana. Failing Padmasana, this is kind of like the second best thing that you can try. And there are ways that you can sit on, I'm not going to say a tennis ball, but sit on different things so that you have an awareness of mula without having your heel, right? Like if you're sitting in a chair like Floriana, you can do that. It's very effective.
With the other foot, is it kind of curved in?
And no, that you're kind of doing half lotus there. That's different. What you're doing is all kind of like a half lotus.
Okay.
Siddha Yoni Asana, you take this foot and you literally tuck it in there. Exactly. And when you do that, then the two heels are stacked. Whereas if you're doing half lotus, they're not. Right? They're sort of more one in front of the other. So in this position, and what is the benefit of this, you'll see in a minute when we get to another mudra, which we're going to do right after Mula Bandha.
Are you also sitting on the
Yeah, that's what I
You
would
can.
You're leaning into the top heel as well?
Leaning into the top heel. Well, it's kind of like the top heel is propped against the pubic bone, right? Can you feel that?
Well,
Yeah. If you're in the correct position, the top heel is pressing into the base of the pubic bone. And it props you, sort of, is what it does. And it props you, and you've got your feet and everything kind of like leveraging you against bony points in the body, so that you're just like planted, sort of, You just root yourself, right? And that's fine. You'll listen to the audio and you'll try it over and over and over again, and then one day you'll think, oh yeah, okay, I get it now. Even if you don't get it in this moment, it's okay. It doesn't matter. So in this position of Siddha Yoni Asana, or males is called Siddhasana because they don't have yonis. Yoni is the vaginal opening, right? This is a very conducive position for experiencing Muladhara Chakra and Mula Bandha. So I'll ask you to close your eyes once again for a moment. And once again, the most important thing is to completely relax. So this thing of letting go is crucial. Exhale. And when you think you've let go some more. And then even more. Very, very subtly and softly and gently, I'd like you to start to activate your vaginal muscles, but super slowly, like as you engage them. It's kind of like the speed of an elevator door closing. And then as you release, the release also takes as long as the elevator door opening, so that you have a real sense of the difference between engaging and releasing. And engaging and releasing. And engaging take your forefinger about 6 to 8 inches in front of your nose and keeping your gaze focused on the very tip of your finger, start to draw the tip of your finger, just the tip, in towards the tip of your nose. Don't take your eyes off the tip of your finger till you touch your nose. And then take your finger away again, very slowly. And then start to draw it in again. Make your focus soft. Relax your brow, relax your eyes as you focus on the tip of your finger. Very relaxed. And then take your finger away again. And then the next time you do it, the next time you draw your finger in, take your awareness to your vaginal muscles and let your finger go. Good. And relax completely. Everything relaxes. And then this time with your eyes open just enough so that you can look at the tip of your nose. And you can use your finger if you like, or not. Maybe you can just take your focus now to the tip of your nose very easily, having done it a few times. And when you take your focus to the tip of your nose, please make sure that what you see there is an inverted V, not a W. You might have to take your glasses off if you're wearing them. Works a little easier without glasses. So you're looking for an inverted V. You're gazing at this inverted V at the tip of your nose. Not a W, it's not anything without your glasses. Oh, no, don't worry about it. And why are we doing this, right? Have an awareness of this. As you gaze at the tip of your nose, can you feel a very subtle connection, like it's like a resonance to Muladhara chakra, to the vaginal musculature, to the sensation of activating your vaginal muscles? So relax everything and then try it. You gaze at your nose. So without doing anything with your vaginal muscles, can you feel like a sympathetic resonance to the vaginal muscles? There is a connection. This is an Ajna chakra practice, and there is a connection between any activity that enhances the awareness of Ajna enhances the awareness of the Muladhara chakras. And you might not feel it so obviously, but if you relax now and open your eyes and forget about everything for a second, just bring your mind back here, and then try it again, like in a minute or so, or 2 or 3, you can then have more of a sense of that reciprocal, it's like a reciprocal action when you focus on the tip of your nose. And I just give you a couple of minutes to completely relax. By the way, does anybody have a full bladder? Because you should empty it for these kinds of practices. It's really hard to do that. Either a full stomach or a full bladder. It's really hard. I'm kind of assuming that the stomach part is looked after because it's 3:30, but maybe not. Okay. So try it again. Just gaze at your nose, just like that. Just gaze at your nose and see if there's some kind of do you experience any consciousness of the vaginal muscles? Very subtle. It's very subtle. Yeah, like that. So Robin's going like this, right?
Apertures or something.
Exactly, apertures, she says. Robin's going, and that's exactly what it feels like. It's like a suctioning. So here the consciousness, the focus is suctioned to here, and then simultaneously there's a very subtle suctioning of the prana in the Muladhara chakra area. That's what's going on. Same with so Tritlada, just focus on the tip of your nose, just like that. And see if you can feel the sensation of some kind of a subtle suctioning at the vaginal muscles. Yeah? You try it now. Time to.
I have trouble isolating my muscles.
Yeah. We're going to work with that in a second.
I also feel heat.
Any awareness of the lower chakras brings heat. I'll just wait for this to come because but anyway, what I'd like you to do here for just a minute is just to do this totally relaxing, completely let go, and then using this nose tip as a way to draw the prana into the central channel at the lower opening of the vaginal opening, as opposed to either of the other two openings in females, right? So these are different energies, and this is what kind of is just saying is she has trouble isolating the vaginal muscles, and we're going to do some stuff in a second, which will help with that greatly, I hope. Who is that? Who is that? Is there somebody there? Oh, there is. Sorry. We're going to do some exercises to isolate that vaginal energy from the other energies, the lower chakras. So Muladhara chakra, the position, the physical location of Muladhara chakra is inside the vaginal opening against the posterior wall of the vaginal canal, just like right where it goes into the cervix, against the back wall of the vaginal opening, the back wall of the vaginal canal. It's like, depends, on your size and on different things, but it's 2 or 3 inches in to the vagina, and you'll have a much higher awareness of it now if you do this nose tip thing. And so now we're doing practices to physically engage the prana there. We're doing gross movements with our bodies, right? We're contracting the vaginal muscles like this and releasing them and contracting them and releasing them. And this is in terms of the gross body, it's subtle. But in terms of the subtle body, it's very gross. Okay? But it works, right? It's going to work for us because we have these bodies and there's some kind of reason why we do. So, one of the reasons is that we get to use it in a gross way as well as a subtle way. So to use the gross body, you can think, oh, I'm going to activate my vaginal muscles, but I'm not too sure that I'm isolating the vaginal muscles, right? So now let's do another little meditation. This time we'll work on one of the mudras called Sahajoli Mudra. Sahajoli Mudra is the female version of Vajroli Mudra, it's called in males. And Sahajoli Mudra is one of the mudras that's discussed in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. And it is the engagement of the energies at the anterior part of the pelvic floor. So the pelvic floor group of muscles has an anterior part. It's pubococcygeus. It's kind of like the muscles which connect to the pubic bone. Pubococcygeal, pubic bone to coccyx type muscles. And then the middle part of the pelvic floor is the vaginal opening, right? The vaginal muscles are a completely different set of muscles, clearly, right? Because they have different functions. We know this is true because they have different functions, right? Then the posterior part of the pelvic floor has a completely different set of functions again. And that's the anal sphincter. So the anal sphincter, ischiococcygeus, connecting the muscles from the ischium to the coccyx, and the ilium to the coccyx. This is another group of muscles at the back, the posterior part of the pelvic floor. So these three different groups of muscles comprise the physical pelvic floor, and they all have completely different functions in the physical body, right? And they all have completely different functions in the subtle body, and they all have completely different functions in the physical body as subtle stabilizers, as opposed to their primary functions. So we'll do a little gross body anatomy, okay? Is it okay with everyone?
Mhm.
It's helpful because we, understand those kinds of structures probably a little better than we understand subtle body structures. So the urethral sphincter, the front part of the pelvic floor, lets us pee. That's the primary function, right? To expel waste fluids from the bladder. So that sphincter there is called the urethral sphincter. And sphincter is something that goes like this. So there is a thing called the peristalsis of the bladder. Does everyone know what peristalsis is? Peristalsis is that thing that the bowel, the large intestine, does when you have to have a bowel movement. You know that feeling of, I gotta go to the bathroom. That's because the the greater intestine, the descending colon, is going like this, pumping. It's pumping the feces down, and you can feel it there. Physically, it's there. It's like you gotta go. The bladder has a similar function, peristaltic action of the bladder, and it's much subtler. But how do we know that the peristaltic function of the bladder is working? Because you have to pee. And actually, it's not a good idea to pee until you have to. It's not a good idea.
Why?
Because if you do, that peristaltic action of the bladder starts to doesn't get it. I mean, it's like, I didn't say to pee, why are you peeing? And you're trying to say, because we're going to the mall and we're going to be in the car for 20 minutes, or because there might not be a bathroom for a while, right? We all do that, right? Especially with our kids. So this is not a good idea. So what will happen if we continue to insist on peeing when we don't have to is that the peristaltic action of the bladder becomes weaker and weaker, and then pretty soon you don't ever really have to pee, and it's not like a really strong thing, and when you go, it doesn't come really strong, it's not like a stream, you know what I mean? Like when you really have to go, right? And you go, it's like, am I right?
Yes.
It's a strong, steady stream, and when you're done, you're done. And if you pee when you have that, it's very good. If you pee when you don't have that, you're kind of trying to pee, and a little bit comes out, and you think you're done, and you get up and you think, oh, I wasn't done. And stuff like that starts to happen, and that's not a good thing.
So that's caffeine and all those things kind of make that worse, right?
Well, I mean, it's a, what do they call it? Diuretics, right? They're diuretics.
Overstimulated?
Yeah, exactly. That's really true. Yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought about that right this moment, but yes, you're right. They do overstimulate that peristaltic action of the bladder, right? And plus the fact that they are diuretics and they pull the fluids and make you want to pee. I mean, they actually literally fill the bladder. So there's that too. But the thing that's really not healthy to do is that thing. So, so for example, how many of us poo just in case? You know what I mean? Like, do you ever go to the bathroom and think, oh, well, I better go and have a bowel movement, just in case, right? Fortunately, it's not possible to do it. If it were possible to do it, we probably would do it. We'd be like, well, I don't have time between now and when I have to leave for work, so you know what? I'm going to poo now. It's a good thing that actually we can't do that, because we'd probably be trying to schedule that too. But, so that's something to remember about the peristaltic action of the bladder. So the urethral, it's a hard one to say, the urethral sphincter is not so strong as the peristaltic action of the anal sphincters, and then the sphincter action of the vagina is completely different, right? Like that's going to be working when you're childbearing or having sex or whatever else you do when you go like this with your vagina, right? I don't know. Mula Bandha, for example. Muladhara chakra practices, that's what we do. So we're going to do all three of those areas of the pelvic floor now. So that you have a sense of how to activate them in the gross body way and have more of an idea of how you might then isolate the different areas. And these are different pranas which are used for different purposes. So it actually becomes very important in higher practices to understand the difference. Are you running out of juice, Lada? Is that the closest outlet, Mariska? Probably, yeah. Yeah. 6 of them. So, anyway, what I was actually just going to say, which I forgot to say, was this. So there's the gross primary function of the parts of the pelvic floor, excretion and excreting fluids and excreting feces, and childbirth, ejaculation, those kinds of strong urges and drives, and they're under the control of not the conscious nervous system, right? That's the primary function of that musculature. Then maybe you knew that also in the gross body there's a function of those muscles in the pelvic floor which have to do with stabilizing the core. And most people do all kinds of different things, and they have some sense of what it is to do stabilization of the core, like maybe you think, plank pose or doing exercises on a Swiss ball or something, or I don't know what you think of when you think of stabilizing the core, but I think most people have heard this term these days probably, and they think of something, right? Well, what it means, it's not so much that you're activating this superficial muscles of the body, like the six-pack, these muscles at the front. It's not that, and it's not even activating the a little bit less superficial oblique muscles. It's not that. What it is it's the muscles at the core. And when we say core muscles in the physical body, we're talking about the muscles which are right up against the bones. Super deep, the deepest of the deep.
Is that also the transverse?
Yeah. Transversus abdominis is the deepest of the abdominal muscles, right? And then all these musculatures that we're talking about here are right up against the bone, the urethral muscles, the vaginal muscles. And they're when you activate the muscles of the pelvic floor, the vagina, for example, it has an effect on the transversus abdominis. Mm. And what's called the multifidus muscles, which are muscles along the spine, all along the spine. And you can imagine, you can think of like that, what we're talking about, the transversus abdominis muscles and the multifidus muscles and the muscles of the pelvic floor are like a corset. You can think of it like a corset. And that's what it is to stabilize the spine. And the stabilizer muscles, which include all of those, which we've been talking about, have this really interesting thing that they do. And it's called pre-anticipatory function. They have a pre-anticipatory function. And what it means is like before you pick up a bag of groceries or cough or reach into your car, or anything, these muscles activate. They activate. The brain, like it's 50 milliseconds or something. Before any movement is initiated, the stabilizer muscles come on, okay? Stabilize your spine so that when you throw or whatever, it's not like the tail is wagging the dog. You know what I mean? So it's like the dog is wagging the tail and the tail is not wagging the dog. So that's the stabilizer function. Then we go from the stabilizer function of the gross body into the the more gross subtle body. So the more gross subtle body are you could say the bandhas and the chakras at this level that we're talking about them right now. So when we talk about activating the vaginal muscles, we're talking about a subtler function of the gross body, but we're also trying to experience this energy, pranic energy, which is a subtle body activity. Okay. So we'll do Sahajoli Mudra, which is the urethral sphincters next. Then we're going to do Ashvini Mudra, which is the anal sphincters. And I don't know, some of you may have noticed that depending on which yoga school you went to, sometimes when they teach the bandhas and they teach Mula Bandha, some schools teach Ashvini Mudra as Mula Bandha, and some schools, not very many, but the Bihar school, the Satyananda School of Yoga teaches Sahajoli Mudra, what we're going to do now, as a part and parcel of Mula Bandha, and some schools teach the vaginal muscles as a function, as Mula Bandha, a way to get to Mula Bandha. And so don't be confused if you have run into some or all of these. That's, again, nobody's wrong. Everybody's right. And somebody will say, oh, well, all I can do is the anal sphincters. So their guru said, okay, well, look, it's not the anal sphincters per se. It's the vaginal muscles. So why don't you try the vaginal muscles, And somebody else will say, well, I can't stop pee mid-flow. Oh, well, why don't you do the Sahajoli Mudra practices, So as to understand the connection between Mula Bandha and the Sahajoli Mudra. Because there is a Sahajoli Mudra has a very important function in practice.
Which one is that?
We're going to do it now.
I'm just getting confused by the Sanskrit terms.
We're going to do it now. So we're going to do the urethral sphincter. Urethral sphincter, Sahajoli Mudra. Huh?
I'm just repeating it so I can get the words.
Oh.
Sahajoli.
Oh yeah, let's all say it. Sahajoli Mudra.
Sahajoli Mudra.
Urethral sphincters.
So
So
tell us how to spell it later.
Think of Sarah.
I think that could be there. Maybe
No.
not. Okay. Well, it's because it's secret teachings. The way it is. Okay. So again, very comfortable and very, very relaxed. It's very difficult to access these energies if you're holding tension in your body. So go through your body and ask each part to relax and let go. Several times. Mouth, let go. Hands, let go. Cheeks, let go. Brain, let go. Hips, let go. Chest, let go. So now you can imagine that you're practicing stopping and starting urine mid-flow. What would you do? This is called Kegels in the world of the gross body. Western medicine, Kegels are exercises which sometimes they prescribe for women who've just had babies to strengthen the muscles of the pelvic floor. Sometimes postnatal women can experience some degree of incontinence, or not just postnatal women. So Kegels are frequently prescribed. Gently, gently activating the muscles that allow you to stop, pee, and then release, and activate, and release, and activate, and release. Notice how much subtler they are than the muscles of the urethra. Sometimes need to be trained a little bit because in the Western medical world, maybe it would be surprising for you to know that incontinence is defined as any loss of any involuntary loss of urine, any involuntary loss of urine from one drop to an entire bladder full. So that sort of changes, puts a whole new spin on it. And if you have any involuntary loss of urine from coughing or anything, then this is a really good practice to do. It's a very good practice. And you can do it when you're actually on the toilet, and you can actually do it and try to see whether you're able to stop urine mid-flow, but you should only do it as a test to see whether you're able to or not. And when you really have to urinate is not a good, what I'm trying to say is it's not a good exercise to do when you actually have to urinate. Okay? It's a good test, and you should be able to do it. You should be able to stop urine mid-flow. We all should be able to do that. And once you know that you can't, then go back and practice in some other setting, not when you have to pee. So that's Sahajali Mudra. Sahajali Mudra is clearly different from the Muladhara chakra, vaginal contractions, right? Those Muladhara contractions, that's Mula Bandha, activating the Mula Bandha. And as I said to you, different schools are calling Mula Bandha different things, but so let me just say that Mula Bandha, Sahajali Mudra, Mula Bandha, and Ashwini Mudra, which we're going to do next, are sometimes used interchangeably. Often. They're often used interchangeably. Why? And we have to defer to the Guru, The Guru decided for some specific person, like the one who wrote the book maybe, right? That's why, depending on which book you read, there's different instructions. It's really common. And there's another reason why they do that, actually. There's another reason why they do that. The other reason is that you're not supposed to do these practices without the Guru. And they kind of make it almost impossible for you to do them without the Guru there, without a teacher to show you and teach you. Because the instructions, even within one book, can be so contradictory or so unclear, like what are they talking about? And it's totally on purpose that it's like that, totally on purpose. Particularly with yoga texts and meditation texts, ancient meditation texts, ancient yoga texts. They're really, really it's designed to be almost impossible to do on your own because you're not supposed to just go buy the book and do it. It wasn't meant to be like that, right?
Question again.
Mhm.
Sorry.
No, why?
Get down here. Are you sitting on your feet?
Am I sitting on my feet?
Are you supposed to be? Is one supposed to? Am I supposed to be sitting on my feet?
You mean your heel?
Yeah.
The back heel?
Yeah.
Well, it's not supposed to be. If
You can.
if you're doing Siddha Yoni Asana, that's where your heel would be. But that's not to say you're supposed to sit on your feet. You could be doing Sukhasana or something else.
What are these
Baddha
practices?
Kolasana. I'm just saying it's not a supposed to be thing.
Right. Okay.
If Siddha Yoni Asana is what you're doing, then you would be sitting on your heel with the other heel stacked on top. If you were doing Sukhasana, then you would be sitting like this with the two heels, one in front of the other. Or maybe you were doing something else, right? Then there's this one. This one has some other name. What is it? Isn't this easy pose? Where you just this is just easy cross-legged pose. That's different from this one here. I think this is different anyway. Isn't it?
It's different.
Yeah, no,
Some people can't do that.
some people can't do this, and it looks like this, but this is a different pose from this. In Hatha Yoga Pradipika I'm talking about. I can't remember just at this moment off the top of my head. But this is one asana, and this is another, actually.
Can I ask a personal question about the placement of the heel? Then segue to Tarjeet's question.
Yeah.
So if the heel is on the yoni, do you actually separate your labia somewhat to
Yeah,
fit it
I
in
mean,
there?
it's gonna happen like that, right?
Eventually? Okay.
It's
You
not
kind
that.
of lean right in, sit
You're
right
just
on
leaning
it.
right into
Center
it.
yourself
And
right
the
on it.
reason-
Maneuver slightly. Yeah.
Okay, and here's the thing with the top heel, while we're on the topic of this, the placement of the feet, the bottom heel is activating Mula Bandha, and I'm just leaning into my heel. It's not that I'm putting my heel into my vagina. I'm just leaning into my heel. Then the top foot is against this, right? The pubic bone, and that is in fact where the clitoris is. So the top heel is pressing into the clitoris. So, what are we doing, right? Why are we activating all these energies? Well, that's what we're doing. We're activating all these lower energies of the body. The top heel, that heel is activating the Sahajoli Mudra.
So it's all like a seal, isn't it?
It's a seal. These are the physical, they're doing physical seals, right? Then with the breath later you do other kinds of seals, and with prana, with the asana you do other kinds of seals.
Yeah.
But this top heel, which is pressing into the lower part of the pubic bone, is activating the energy, the pranic energy of Sahajoli Mudra, the one we just did, the urethral sphincter.
Before you go too far into this, and this is just me being really analytical, I'm trying to. So I was taught Mula Bandha, well, in the vague ways that it was taught over time. I've kind of absorbed it as a kind of this kind of diamond net, and I guess that so the tip of the diamond, I guess, would be the urethral. The point would be the anal sphincter, and
Diamond this way? Like flat?
like that. So imagine like that.
Oh yeah, okay.
So imagine if it's all of the pelvic
floor.
floor, and that the bandha is somehow like engaging the whole thing as like a kind of a contraction and lifting up.
Mula Bandha?
Yeah, that the whole thing was Mula Bandha.
Yeah, it's what you're saying. I'm not going to say it's true or right or wrong.
So you're saying that some people talk about it, but
yes.
But at one point, I thought you also said that the Mula Bandha was actually 2 to 3 inches down from the top of the cervix on the posterior wall.
Muladhara chakra. Did I say Mula Bandha?
Different,
Or
right?
maybe I said Mula Bandha. Sorry.
I'm not sure.
You said chakra.
Did I say chakra?
I think you said
I'm
chakra.
sorry if I did, because that's not right. It's Muladhara chakra, which is against the posterior wall of the
So,
vaginal
and that's
canal.
confusing. That's not the same thing. Because I was
No.
thinking of it. I've always just
So,
thought it was the same thing.
These things that we're doing are exercises to activate Muladhara chakra. These are exercises to activate Muladhara chakra.
Okay.
Mula Bandha. In the Satyananda school, they teach Mula Bandha as this pranic energy of that happens when you activate the vaginal muscles. However, they also simultaneously teach Sahajoli Mudra and Ashvini Mudra. At the Salt Spring Center of Yoga, it's Ashvini Mudra that's taught as Mula Bandha. Mula Bandha. We haven't done Ashvini Mudra yet, we're about to. But that's how they teach Mula Bandha. So what you're saying, it's true what you're saying. It's not necessarily just the vaginal muscles, and it's not necessarily just the anal sphincters or the urethral sphincters. But what it is, in the way that I have learned it, and in my own personal practice, my experience of these energies is that they are very different energies. They're very different energies. The energy of the urethral sphincters has one, and it has a specific purpose in other practices. The energy of the vaginal muscles has a specific purpose in asana and other practices. The energy of Ashvini Mudra has a specific purpose. Like what, for example, you might ask? I remember I did. I'm like, what? Ashvini Mudra, Like, most of us know that Mula Bandha, right? You float into Bakasana, you use Mula Bandha. Or like standing poses, you activate Mula Bandha, it's much easier. Like mostly that's what I hear taught in asana classes. Ashvini Mudra is the mudra that really facilitates Sarvangasana, shoulder stand.
Which one? That's the
Shoulders.
anal?
Yeah,
sphincter?
which we're about to do.
Ashwini.
Ashwini. We're going to do that now. But where's Floriana?
No, her back's she's in the washing.
She left. She's at Floriana.
The purse is there.
No, I know. But I saw her leave. I just don't want to start the meditation. She's going to look in any second. So I'll do something else for a bit.
What about, does it matter which foot is where?
Oh,
No.
no, it doesn't really.
Interchangeable.
No, and you should switch. You shouldn't be in the habit of doing just one on the bottom all the time. Yeah. So Lada said, "Oh, I feel a heat," right? She said, "Oh, I feel a heat," and that is actually another very important point, which is it's a good time to talk about. You know, why are we doing these practices again? What was it? Like we want to be this some sort of a cool being that can float around and save people from certain disaster and like some 2015 super woman, minus the phone booth because there aren't any. We can like change in our cell phones, right? Like evolve as some other kind of being. Hatha practices are meant to shift around the elemental structure of your body, your physical body. That's what they're meant to do. So we are composed of, this, right? And this is like physical flesh and all that and bone and all that stuff, and there's lots of fluid in there. And then there's the nervous system, which is like some different something, right? It's neither bone nor is it fluid. It's something different. You can say it's energy, right? And then there's some other thing that drives it all, somewhere up here, right? That says, pick up that child, or, right? Or poo, or whatever, right? Something up here is driving everything somehow, right? Right? The mind, the brain, the central nervous system, this consciousness that gives rise to everything, right? So, we say that we're composed of these 5 elements: earth, water,
Air.
wind, fire, wind, and then, ether or consciousness, right? And Hatha yoga practices are meant to decrease the level of earth and water elements in our bodies and increase the level of fire and wind elements in our bodies.
I want to say why, but
Right. You should. I'm thinking, isn't somebody going to say why? Why indeed? Because the subtle body, when you talk about the subtle body, when you talk about a gross body, right, you're talking about a preponderance of earth and fluid, earth and water element. As you start to talk about a subtle body, you're talking about an increase in fire and wind, fire and prana elements
things
of
that
the
could
body.
happen.
Things that
aren't there.
Things that aren't there, they're ineffable. They're not subject like earth and water. They're not subject to, like, for example, continuous replenishment or excretion types of practices. So bodies that are primarily fire and wind are less susceptible to earth and water obstacles, like, for example, walls or, water. Like, you might be able to walk on water or walk through walls if you didn't have such a high proportion of earth and water elements in your body. If you were more fire and wind, right, then a wall would not prove an obstacle to you. So your consciousness and your fire element and your water element and your wind element and your whatever the other one is are all hinging upon a certain predisposition. A certain predisposition to one or the other of those elements, or some of those elements. So how do you shift that proportion? How do we shift that proportion of elements to become more ineffable, less susceptible to the obstacles posed in our physical universe? And Hatha practice is like a big one. Hatha is a very direct practice, very direct. So as you do these kinds of practices, pranayama and asana and mudra bandha practices, they decrease the earth and water elements in your body. They decrease the earth and water elements in your body significantly. Okay, so for example, Roger and I, we're in retreat. We're doing these practices a lot. That's all we're doing. We got skinny, we got very, very thin. And, kind of like in this right here and now in the world, out here in the world, it's what you would call alarmingly skinny. Alarmingly skinny, right? But in practice, in retreat, it was perfect. It was perfect. Our practice went very well when we were at that particular degree, proportionate degree of earth to water to wind to fire to wind, to consciousness, right? So as your body increases in fire and wind element, the consciousness that supports those elements becomes more and more and more predominant.
Were
And
you eating less or just somehow burning it?
Well, that's right. The answer is yes, although it was an or question. The answer is yes. So when you no longer have so much physical body, you don't need to eat. And then you don't need to pee so much, and you don't need to do all the different things. And yeah, exactly. And what is very hilarious is when we were attending school in Arizona, we lived in an RV. And the RV is so cool, because the RV has the food tank, and then it has the fridge, right? And we would have to unanchor ourselves from our spot where we were parked. We would have to unanchor ourselves and drive into this town 45 minutes away in order to empty the poo tanks and fill up the fridge.
Just move it from one part of the RV to the other.
And we found it hilarious, and it was always a source of great hilarity, that we had these bodies. It's like, come on already,
So the question is, did you go less frequently
Anyway,
over time?
the point is that when you start to increase the fire and the wind, then you literally become lighter. You literally have a much, much higher, the consciousness is now supporting the fire and the wind element. That means prana. So you have a much higher association with the pranic energy in your body than the blood and the nutrient distribution systems and right? So it starts out as a much higher awareness of how your nervous system is driving your body, and that sort of evolves into a much higher awareness of just the prana energy. The prana energy is much subtler than the nervous system. So, and that's the point from a hatha perspective. What's going on with your attitude, meanwhile, right? As your body becomes light, literally. It becomes light from a point of view of standing on the scale, but it also becomes light from a point of view of that you become composed of light and not so much blood and phlegm, and physical tissue, right? It's both. And what happens is that there is the yogic texts, the translations anyway of the yogic texts, use terms like, raises your consciousness, right? Raises your consciousness. What does that mean when your consciousness is raised? What it means is that you just have this completely different sense of me, you see? And then because the me is not so physically delineated anymore, physically there isn't this line, right? Then this whole concept of me gets kind of fuzzy, right? Because you don't have this identification with this demarcation You know? And then what? So then what? Well, we'll all practice hard, and whoever gets there first can send a postcard to the rest of us. How's that?
Cool.
Deal? Okay? Promise to send a postcard. So that's what we're all doing here. You know, we're trying to figure out how and what that postcard would look like, right? That we're going to send. So that's the thing with the elemental structure of the body. The elemental structure of the body, we're going in that direction. We're trying, and so, you know, people say, oh, yeah, you know, we're going to be light bodies, you know, like, I always used to think, well, what are they talking about? We're going to be light bodies. It all sounded a little airy-fairy to me, and it, frankly, it wasn't good enough for me. I'm like, what do you mean exactly? What exactly do you mean? Like, what light body, you know? Right? This is the one that we're talking about. It's a physical, scientific process. It's a method. Hatha Yoga Pradipika outlines it. Did you have to put money in the parking meter or something?
Well, then it takes too long to explain. It
Okay,
took me an
fine.
hour to
Good.
took me all this time to.
We were waiting for you before we did
Oh,
our
thank
Ashwini
you, but-
Mudra.
Had a big long discussion with it. Some of it ended up giving me $2.
Yeah.
And actually,
So we're going to do the anal sphincters now. And we didn't want you to miss the anal sphincters.
Yeah.
So we went off on a big light body rant.
oh, thank you.
But you'll have to listen to the audio to get the light body rant.
Okay.
So Ashwini Mudra is the third posterior part of the pelvic floor, and some people call it Mula Bandha, right? We go back to that. Some people call this Mula Bandha. So let's experience what this one feels like. Again, always start with letting go, completely letting go. Relax. Let your shoulders go. Lips, let go. Throat, let go. Hands, let go. Belly, let go. So, imagine that you're in a crowded elevator and you've eaten raw onions or something. I don't know, something that gives you terrible gas. And your belly is bloated and you have to pass gas, something fierce, but you're in a crowded elevator. So, what do you do in order to keep from passing gas? You know? What is the thing that you do? Somehow you hold on, right? So now imagine that the elevator has arrived at your floor, and thankfully nobody's going to get out but you. You're the only one, so you get out of the elevator, and the doors close, and now you can release whatever it was you were doing, and go ahead and relieve some of this gas. Let it go. So I call this, in some other courses I teach, I call it the gas stoppers. It's the anal sphincters. It's called Ashwini Mudra in Sanskrit. So very gently activate them again, anal sphincters, and release. engage and release and engage and release. Keep going rhythmically, not too fast, not too slow. It's a stronger energy than Sahajali Mudra. It's a stronger energy than the urethral sphincter. Rhythmically contract and relax. Ashwini Mudra. And now completely release. And let go. Let your sitting bones go. Let your pubic bone go. Let your shoulders go. Let your jaw go. Relax. Let go. Now, go back to your vaginal muscles and activate them a few times, more like the speed of an elevator door opening and closing, a little slower than Ashwini Mudra. Very clear in your mind with the engaging phase as opposed to the releasing phase. Very clear. Engage and release. Totally release. Maybe you want to open your eyes and gaze at your nose tip to help you. Up to you. Now relax. Again, let your pubic bone go, your sitting bones go, your hips relax, buttocks let go, belly let go. And then take your awareness to the urethral sphincter, Sahajali Mudra. And then it's called Vajra Mudra. And now engage your P-stopper muscles as though you were starting and stopping the flow of urine. Much subtler, softer energy. About the same speed as the vaginal muscles. Bandha. And let go your pubic bone. Let go your belly again. Let go your hips. Buttocks relax. And then go back to Sri Mudra. Anal sphincters. A little bit quicker, rhythmic contractions. Then completely release and relax your entire midsection. Let go. And then just for a couple of minutes, I'd like you to go back and forth through the three, just by yourself, focusing on isolating the areas, completely isolating the areas. Totally relax. So become very heavy now when you're saying those. Ask yourself to let go several times. Not holding any residual tension, any resting tension in your body. Oops, I'm sorry. So it's very important to ask yourself to let go. Because sometimes these practices, that you do them for a while and you're not aware of it, but you're holding this like resting tension, and that can contribute to sort of like, it's like if you do too much of these kinds of practices, then you might become constipated or you might have trouble peeing, stuff like that. So, and that comes from too much residual tension that you're never really letting go of, and then you start to mess with these sphincters because the sphincters are dependent upon everything being completely at a state of neutral rest, and then otherwise those sphincters don't work.
That would be a contraindication, yes.
It would be. Did you hear what Leonardo said, everyone? She said, would that be a contraindication? Yes, it would. Actually happened. It happened to one of our teachers that they couldn't pee because they overdid this Sahajali practice, Sahajali Vajra practice. And we also have the experience of doing too much Bandha practice, and then you very easily can get constipated, and it raises the heat, right? So that's the other thing, is it really raises the heat. So what's happening, right? It's raising your internal heat. When your internal heat rises, it dries out your body fluids. It's called reduction in the water element. When that happens, your digestive system speeds up big time. As your digestive system speeds up big time, you assimilate nutrients from whatever food you're taking so efficiently and so fast that you virtually have to eat nothing, and you like totally nourished, and you don't have to like go, you don't have to have bowel movements very much, and they're not really big, and at first it's called constipation, right? Initially that's what it's called, because you'd still think, I gotta eat more than this, Roger will say, that's not enough, you gotta eat more, so like I'll eat more, but you don't. You see, like there is a point when you actually don't, and this is I am talking about practicing in an extreme way, okay? But just a simple few minutes of practice, you'll notice that it raises the heat energy, and it really, really fires up the digestive system. And the result of that is you will digest your food much more efficiently, and more of the food that you eat will be digested and assimilated. And that looks like a much healthier digestive system, a much healthier body, right? And everything is moving much more quickly and efficiently. And so, you know, you're not like sluggish. You're not sluggish looking, you're not feeling sluggish, you're like light and prana-ish.
What you were saying earlier though about the sphincters not, like basically, I mean, are you saying they're cramping up in a way?
They do. That's exactly what happens. So if you don't totally release them, right, they stay in this contracted state, semi-contracted state at rest, and then you could call it a cramp.
And
yeah.
we're spending all this time trying to understand what it feels like so that we can, because it's so subtle, so that we can engage it, and then it's kind of you get the opposite problem at a certain point. It's like
Exactly.
you have to focus on trying to release.
Yes, and it does happen. It does. I mean, it happens pretty easily, actually. You know, if you seriously do the practices.
Yeah.
So just to watch for that, and yes, it's a contraindication. And I'd like everybody to stand up and stand on their toes, like this. I know, my toenails. My
Yeah.
son got married yesterday. That is the reason that my toenails look like this. It was an occasion of great joy. So we're just going to go like this and stand on all 10 toes and then go back down. And when you stand on all 10 toes, try not to collapse your feet to the outer edges. Try to stay evenly weighted on all 10 toes and back down. All 10 toes. Here. And once you get that, it's probably, you're doing it beautifully. It's easier on a hard surface rather than a cushy surface.
The
Yeah.
blanket making it easy.
It probably makes it easier when you're not on a blanket or even on a carpet. Plus a blanket would be more difficult, probably. But anyway, it's easy on wood or tile. And then we're going to add some arms here. The palms clasped, fingers clasped like this, and the palms face up. Yeah. And then as you come up onto all 10 toes, you're going to simultaneously inhale and stretch your arms up. So go. So I'm going inhale and then exhale as you lower down. Inhale and exhale. Inhale. And then as you get a little steadier and you can stay evenly weighted through all 10 toes, you might find it easier to gaze up a little. Helps you keep your balance and stretch your arms up a little higher. Stay balanced. Good. Do a couple more. Good. So then next one is a little bit more difficult, and the trick is to keep your gaze directly ahead of you. So the next one, you can change the clasp of your fingers now. So as you inhale, you come up onto all 10 toes again, and you're going to side bend. And then the other way, inhale, side bend. And you can stand against the wall like this if you feel a little unsteady. Even right up against the wall. So that your head or something has a bit of support if you're concerned about your balance. And so you can notice, right, that the trick is now to keep yourself weighted through your feet evenly in such a way that you can take ground force and get you into that side bend. So it feels like you're having to put more weight into the outside foot. You know what I mean, right? So going side to side and really stretch your arms too. Really, really stretch through your arms, your clasped fingers. Good. So what this series of very simple little things does is it it stretches every part of the nervous system when we do this. Every part of the nerves of your body, all the nerves of your body, from your toes, tips of your toes to your fingertips, are getting this big stretch. And this is in preparation for trying to experience even subtler parts of the subtle body. It's useful to stretch the nerves and try to get the congestion, off the nerves, right? And when the nerves are congested, and they do get congested with phlegm, literally, like gunky. Gunky, right?
So no cheese.
Snotty.
No cheese. No
Snotty
cheese, no
nerves.
cheese.
All through your body, we have snotty nerves, and these things really clean, like stretch the nerves and release the congealed
You're
stuckness.
saying like literally, like if we were
Literally.
to cut into the body and looked at the nerves, they would be covered in stuff.
Yeah. Well, they're all sitting in there. It's not like they have some protective encasing, saran wrap or something. Well, actually, they do, and it's called fascia, but the fascia also gets all gunky and snotty and stuff. It does. So, nice. Good. So you'll feel, this is a really amazing thing to do in the morning, by the way, first thing in the morning. It really helps if you're constipated. It totally helps. Stretches all the nerves in your body, right? Including all of the nerves which drive the digestive system. And everything just starts moving along like crazy. So we do this little thing every morning, and then we go like this, and you can do this too. So standing in one place, and it's not driven by your breath. You just breathe normally, and you swing, and let some momentum happen. You can let your arms start to go faster and faster. So the one arm is coming, the hand is coming to the shoulder, and the other hand is reaching around the waist. The hand to shoulder, and the other hand to the waist, around the waist. Yeah, good.
And the benefits are.
Huh?
And the benefits.
So I'm showing you 5 exercises right now, okay? And if you come to the Hatha Pradipika retreat, we'll be doing this. These are 5 exercises involved in what's called Shanka Prakshalana. Do you know Shanka Prakshalana practice?
Mm.
It's like a practice that's used to clear out the entire digestive system. Not like enema, but it has the same effects as that.
Oh.
Yeah, same effects. So and the practice is preceded by these 5 exercises. Those 3, and then the next one, because that's good. The next one is it's like a little twisting cobra. See, I'll show you some things. So it's cobra. You can put your hands under your shoulders, but stay on your toes like this. Curl your toes under, and then what you do is you totally let your butt go. Your whole torso stays so relaxed. It's not like you're trying to push up into a cobra, and this is completely relaxed. Can you see? My buttocks and my whole belly is just sagging into the floor, There's no tension in my midsection at all. And then you just inhale and look around the corner at one heel, and you exhale back down. Inhale. Look around the corner at the other heel. Exhale back down. Okay? So, generally you do 8 to each side, but we won't do that many right now. And this practice is phenomenal for moving the bowels, because you start by looking around the corner to the right. So what you're doing is you're squeezing the left colon, side of the colon. And as you twist like that, it squeezes out that ascending colon. Which side is the descending on again? The left.
Right.
Oh, the right, yeah. So you twist to the right first.
Oh no,
No, it's
on the
left.
left, sorry.
You twist to the right first,
No.
because whichever is on whichever side.
Who are you all?
Okay,
You all
listen,
know
it's okay,
this.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You twist to the right first, because
the left.
that pushes whatever is in the colon into the right side, the correct side.
Right, the appendicitis is on the descending.
Okay, but
The
what I'm
appendix.
trying to say is you need
It's
to
on
twist to the
on the
right
right.
first. And the reason you need to twist to the right first is because twisting to the right first pushes the fecal matter into that part of the colon, which it then can make its way around the corner and down and out. So you twist to the right first, exhale back down. Inhale, twist to the left, exhale back down. Yeah, and try to keep the pubic bone close to the floor, so you're not lifting up so high. It's just that you're relaxing your butt completely. That's great, Florian. Awesome. Okay. You just inhale and you look around the corner. Good. Really good. So, I don't know, usually I can't even get through 8 on each side. I have to go to the bathroom. It's really true. And there is a 5th exercise, which I'm not going to show you just because it's like a little bit more involved. And it's not important. And for this moment, I wanted to do these exercises with you, A, because we're all going to fall asleep, and B, because I wanted to wake up your nervous systems a little bit and clear them before we do a couple more things here. So that's nice, right?
So you breathe,
Inhale
like,
up,
inhale
up.
and then you
Inhale, you inhale up and look around the corner, and you
Okay,
exhale
so it's
down.
like one breath.
Yeah.
One inhale breath.
Yes,
There.
exactly.
I
So that should feel quite nice, and like it really should wake you up. Feel a little bit more.
Huh? I'm not sure what it is.
And then, because now we're going to get a little even more subtle. Well, for me anyway, it was harder to now. We're moving into. See, what we've done so far is we have done practices which heighten the awareness of the lower chakra, lowest chakra, Muladhara chakra. Say Muladhara.
Muladhara.
She doesn't pronounce it like that, so I'm Muladhara. Muladhara.
Irish.
Anyway,
Australian.
so it's the lowest chakra, and it's the one that's against the posterior wall of the vaginal canal, 2 or 3 inches into the body, and it's like a hot spot. They call it something. What do they call it?
It's not the G spot.
It's the isn't it?
Is it?
I thought
Well, I
that was
don't
at the
know.
front.
I thought it was at the front too.
The G front is at the front.
I
Yeah,
thought
so.
Oh, well, it's not that then.
The anterior.
We'll have to go and check. Maybe Google will tell us.
So this Muladhara chakra, the lowest of the chakras, is you all know that it's very much concerned with and raises the energy of survival energies, right? Instinctive survival energies. What are instinctive survival energies?
Things to do with family.
Fight,
Like
flight.
sex, for
Yeah,
example.
well, yeah.
That's the energy that it raises, right? The energies of procreation, the energies of we must survive, we must continue, we must procreate. These are the energies of Muladhara chakra. So in the Satyananda system, the Satyananda school of yoga, they advise very strongly that you work with Ajna chakra before you move to Muladhara chakra. Ajna chakra is the chakra of discriminating wisdom. Discriminating wisdom is the wisdom that lets you say, oh, what am I going to do with all this sexual energy? And the discriminating wisdom lets you say, oh, you know what? I'm going to see whether I can harness this heat energy and draw it into my central channel so that I can raise my consciousness and transcend the lower energies of us humans, you know?
Some Taoists do that, like Tao.
Pardon?
Tao
Yeah,
is like that's
yeah, they do.
they do.
Well, I think all religions do that. All religions
Really?
are trying to get us to, like, be holy. Right? Like, let's try to be holy and raise our consciousness above You know, sex and food, basically.
Strong,
Can we think about
strong.
something besides sex and food for a minute? You know, why don't you try God, you know?
Or money.
Okay, money. We can say try and raise our consciousness above sex, food, and money, you know?
Yeah.
Right? So
I wanna-
that's what we're trying to
Above
do,
that.
basically. And so the discriminating, that's why they want to, they teach to raise your awareness of Ajna Chakra so that you remember what you're supposed to do with all this heat that you've raised in the lower part of your body, right? Oh yeah, it's the circle. Right? No, I'm serious. And when you work with Ajna Chakra and you have a different perspective on what just felt like sexual energy, you know, and you know it has a whole different flavor to it, and you get to have this whole different use of it, and it's an extremely powerful energy, and it will serve all of us very well, because you know it's Kali Yuga, right? Kali Yuga is the age of degeneration. We're in the age of degeneration right now. We're at the height of the age of degeneration. You know, the desire realm. Like, hello, you know, what's the rest of the billions and billions of people in this planet doing right now? Like, I saw this sex shop on the way down driving here, and the ad on the sex shop was way better than Viagra, it says. And I thought, well, that's good. No, really, I did, you know. I thought, it's true. It is way better than Viagra, you know, than taking drugs. It's got to be better than taking drugs. And I don't know that, anyway, that's a different discussion. But the point is that the lower chakras have an incredible dispensary of energy for our use, for our spiritual use. And the system of yoga is teaching how to do that, is teaching how to do exactly that, you know, how to transform into a being that not only transcends a lower use, which doesn't really serve us that well, but not only that, but transforms us into a being that has absolutely no need, you know, of food or sex or money or sleep or stuff like that. I know, how nice would that be? You know, I'm talking about need. I'm not saying, I'm saying, you know, there's something about the need part, which to me is like, it's not that I have anything against food, sex, or money, okay? I don't. I'm just saying it's the need that I don't like that, you know?
Dependency.
I'd rather not be a person who needed it. That's all I'm saying. So we're going to move now to the Manipura chakra. The Manipura chakra, we're going to move to Svadhisthana. Although Svadhisthana doesn't specifically enter into, I mean, it does in a sort of an indirect way. So Mula Bandha is primarily concerning itself with the specific location of the Muladhara chakra. The Muladhara chakra awareness heightening exercises are the ones that we've just done, right? All of them raise the awareness of Mula Bandha, Muladhara chakra. So it's as Robin was saying, you know, although my teachers have taught me that it's primarily the vaginal muscles, which you know, your consciousness should hook into the vaginal muscles as Mula Bandha, you know? Like, so for example, if I'm going into Bakasana or something, you know, I'm going to do a standing balance, right? Come up on my toes. If I think consciously in my mind, oh, activate my vaginal muscles, right? It would work for me to do that. Is it that isolated? Probably not. If you have a propensity to being much more of a kind of a butt gripper kind of person, I call it the butt gripper kind of person, who's a little bit like anally, you know, a little anal and tighten the anal sphincters, then you might want to do more Sahajali practice.
To balance?
Yeah,
Like
exactly. So it's all kind of subtle, okay? But anyway, suffice to know that those mudras and bandhas are the ones that connect with Muladhara chakra. Manipura chakra, the awareness of Manipura chakra, is an Uddiyana Bandha connection. So when you activate Uddiyana Bandha, it's Manipura chakra that you're affecting directly affecting Manipura, Uddiyana Bandha, that Manipura chakra. Manipura chakra is located at the level of the navel. So if you put your fingers into your navel and you draw a circle around your waist and you go to the back, that point on your spine is the location of Manipura chakra. I don't know if you knew, but all the chakras except Muladhara have a corresponding location in the front of the body called Kshetram. Kshetram location. The Kshetram location of Manipura chakra is the navel.
So you're saying a corresponding spot on the front part, meaning that the chakras are all at the back,
Yes.
or they're supposed to be like literally on the spine.
Literally,
Well,
they're in
not
front.
take that word out.
Well, no, literally, they're
Yeah.
literally they're in front of the spine.
Okay.
Literally, and they're not. It's not like you could cut open the
Right.
body and see it,
Right.
as you said, right?
Yeah.
But that is where they are. That's where they are.
So they're
It's-
both in front, but there's like kind of maybe two levels, two
You know
layers.
what it is? Is it corresponds to the plexuses, plexi, like
Yeah.
plexuses,
Yeah.
plexuses. The sacral plexus is Svadhisthana chakra. The what's this one called?
Solar
This
plexus.
solar,
plexus
yeah.
is Manipura chakra. The forget the name.
The pectoral, no. Pectoral, no.
There's the plexus right here,
Yeah.
the heart chakra, right? And here
No,
too.
don't remember.
So that's what they correspond to. Plexus, in other
Plexus is
words,
like
a bunch of nerves,
crosses together, like,
which are coming out
yeah.
at that level from the central spine, central spinal canal. And in the gross body, that's where they are, right at those points. So the Manipura chakra is at the solar plexus, and it's right here. Draw our fingers around the navel, find that spot. And one of the most important things that Roger and I both noticed with Manipura chakra is A, that it's quite difficult to locate, quite difficult to pinpoint, and B, if your posture is not absolutely perfectly erect, you can't find it. And if you have any tendency to slump when you're in meditation, you'll lose Manipura chakra. So if everybody now goes to a point here and put a finger or two, or your thumb even, on that point, and can you feel like if you run your fingers up and down along the spine, you'll feel bony protuberances, especially if you bend forward like this a little. Can you feel the knobbies? Okay, vertebrae, those are the vertebrae, right? When we say sit up straight, right, you shouldn't be able to feel any of those protuberances. They should all recede.
They disappear.
So see if you
Yeah.
can do that. See if you can do that, feel them, and then run your
Disappear.
fingers down along your spine. And then what does it take to sit up so straight that those knobbies are not protruding anymore?
Mhm.
Okay? So now
that
you're
if
in
you
neutral
consider
spine.
neutral, okay.
Okay? So particularly with Manipura, that's important. So find that particular level again and make sure that particular spinous process is what it's called. That particular spinous process is not protruding. Keep your thumb on it. And then just keep your thumb on there for a second as you situate yourself into your relaxed, comfortable meditation position again. But just keeping your thumb pressing against that spot. Checking every few seconds that it's not starting to protrude, because guess what? It's not hard. It doesn't take much for that spinous process to protrude. Try it. It's the
Mhm.
most subtle little shift. Even just your chin dropping forward takes your spine out of that position that it needs to be in to do any kind of work with your prana and your sushumna. Okay? And that just tells you how subtle it really is, right? That cannot protrude, okay? So keep your thumb on there. And when you find a position where you can hold the sushumna in that absolutely straight position, with the sitting bones grounding you, you might start to feel not only heat, but almost like an electric zappy energy. Very relaxed. Very, very relaxed. Everything else very relaxed. Just your thumb pressing. And it can come gradually as you press, as everything else relaxes. Maybe you'll feel some kind of electrical energy. It's just sort of like a zzz, it's kind of an energy. If you don't think you're in the right spot, landmark it again. I like to use my thumb because it's a steady, strong pressure. Steady, strong pressure. Very, very slowly, without opening your eyes. Release your thumb gradually. Relax your hands. Keep your spine in that position. And keep your consciousness focused on the sensation, the residual ghost sensation of where your thumb was pressing. Keep your consciousness there. Keep your mind there. Draw your mind back into that sensation. Draw your mind in a little tighter. Don't lose the consciousness of that sensation. Bring it back. Bring it back. Bring it back. into a point like that, a sensation, especially a sensation, if you're right in the crucial point of the chakra, it's much easier. So landmarking, initially landmarking using your physical body is very important, and doing it over and over so that you feel, and then it'll get to, you'll landmark it like this and you'll feel like, oh, okay, that's it, I got it, And so you have to practice, right? You have to practice it. And that's what happens when you practice, is that then you get it. And it will come. And you'll be like, oh yeah, that's it. And when you get that sense of, oh yeah, that's it, then you keep your thumb on it for a bit, a minute or 2 minutes, and then you release your thumb slowly, and the feeling should be as though your thumb were still there. The sharpness and the intensity of holding the sensation should be that sharp. And when you do that, then you have withdrawn your consciousness from your outer senses, from the interaction of your senses with your external environment, including your body, right? Every part of your body except that part of your body. And then you have a crack at Kevala Kumbhaka. So Kevala Kumbhaka is a spontaneous, what it means is spontaneous retention or spontaneous capsule. And it's the Sanskrit term that's referring to what happens in a state of samadhi when your breath stops spontaneously, because all of your awareness has gone to a single focal point. And as a result of the fact that your mind has drawn in, and as a result of the fact that the mind and the breath are inextricably connected, you cannot separate them. So when you take your mind to a certain place, your breath has to come too. And when you take your mind to a still place like that, then your breath also is going to go to that still place. And so then when your mind stops on that place and stays on that place, then your breath stops and stays. And that's Kevala Kumbhaka, spontaneous retention. And it is the goal of these hatha practices. That is what's going on here. And that is a platform where you can stand and move very, very quickly forward. You can move very quickly forward in spiritual practice when you have that ability to bring your mind and your breath to a point, stop it, and keep it. That's the point. That's samadhi. Kevala Kumbhaka is the preferred method of pranayama, by the way. That is the preferred method of pranayama. Why do we do all? Why do we do all that then? Because it's so hard to do the other one. Because it's so hard. So I'll tell you, just in my opinion, that hatha practice makes it very easy, actually. For me, for my particular karmic predisposition, this practice makes it very easy for me to bring my mind and my prana and my breath to a particular single place. There are many ways that we can do that, right? Many, many different ways that we can do that. But pranayama is one. That kind of practice that we just did is one, right? Where you're focusing and the object of your meditation are your chakras. It's called chakra sadhana practice, a chakra practice. So that's a practice of hatha yoga. Pranayama is like a much more gross way to achieve the same thing. So if you sit there and you do gross pranayama practice, alternate nostril or like ujjayi or whatever, right, kind of pranayama you're doing, it has the same effect, right? Eventually your mind will come down, your mind will get stiller, and then you can eventually it becomes very automatic, and then eventually you let go of this altar, this hand over here, and then eventually you're not really doing anything. It's just almost like a psychic manipulation of the prana, you know, through one nostril out the other. The Tibetans start there, right? Interestingly, right? But the whole point is not to do this forced retentions. That's really not the point. The point is that spontaneous retention that you guys all just did, because I said, bring your mind back to that feeling, you know, and you had somewhere to go with your mind, right? And that somewhere pulled you, right? It pulled you. And you can go there, you could go there, and you could just try to keep going there. And that's what it's really all about. So the more you have a very good familiarity with the landmarking systems, the easier it will be. The sensation will be stronger. The clue is that it's you. When you got it, you know it, kind of thing. Yeah, it's this electric kind of zzz, kind of a thing.
I might have to just save it. I'm concerned that my batteries are low. I don't know why it's not recharging. So I might just have to stop the recording
Yeah.
on Ustream and save it so I don't lose any.
Oh yeah, sure.
Do you
sure.
mind? I'm just
Yeah,
gonna,
yeah, absolutely.
please keep going. I just
I mean, it's 5 to 5, and so we're done. We're done. And what I want to say is this: that you know, before we reconvene, it would be very good if you did the things that we did